Happy Thursday, Tinon.
Yep. How's it going?
It's going all right. Saw the hacker news on Docker Hub having a bad day yesterday.
Yeah. Docker Hub has a tiny hiccup, and everyone feels empowered to come out of the woodwork and say how much they hate Docker.
Everybody simultaneously screams at once. It's like,
Tale as old
uh,
as time.
apparently you guys still do like them.
Yeah. There were some really funny comments in there, like Docker took too long to support C groups v2. Like, really? That was years ago.
Yep. Oh, yeah, Derek in here, but I guess he heard Docker Hub and ran away.
Yeah.
How's it going today, Rom?
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Doing well.
Get the sharing started here. Get my other windows up. I hope Derek just had to reboot his laptop or something. Although it's entirely possible he looked at his calendar and said, oh, wrong meeting. Got the same review items from last time, so I figure we'll probably skip over those unless people want to chat about them again. My hope is if I leave them on the list long enough, someone will get tired of seeing the same ones every week. And other than that, I threw a link over to where I've got the current work in progress on the conformance. So that's sitting out there. It exists. It is, like I say, work in progress. Things are happening. Um, so yeah, more is going to be needed for throwing a whole lot more tests in here of not just a single test empty, not just single test push, generate more data for more scenarios. A whole lot of things like that need to happen. But the important part for me when I was working on it was one, I was doing a lot of work getting the configuration import in. So if I pull this back up again, configuration, I've got a conformance struct tag that I pick on. And so I know how to pull that apart and say, okay, if I see that, go find the registry environment variable, load that in if it exists. Otherwise, I fall back to the YAML config file that gets loaded in. Otherwise, I got defaults for a lot of these things. So a bunch of that work happened early on. And then more recently, it was a lot of going through and getting the HTML output right. So yeah, the HTML report, I needed to have some report data. I need some Go templates. The actual templates themselves are over in the config. Most of these templates over here were a copy and paste from what we had before, but I did a few things in there where I have a template calling on a template. So I've got in here some, like the summary at the top is just another template, and that's down below. The important thing though is the results template. That was the reason I had to go through the extra effort. And so that one, where is my results? Got the status color. Am I in the results? I might be in the results. Nope, I'm not. There's the results. Tabbing is a hard thing. Um, yeah, so the results, as it goes through and generates them, calls the template on results as it's going through the children. So it's recursive. So that was the main reason I needed to do that. I didn't want to go through and try to sort out the recursion process and maintain a few levels of specific tiers and whatnot. It just has it for each entry in there, which gives us this little tree structure in there where you have the top level, then it goes in and pulls all the child objects. And these can be as granular as we need them to be, or less granular if we don't need them to be so granular. And it's capturing the output for each of these. So that was the other big thing to do, was to have all the request response to send the output to a little logger that captures all the output. But also, as we're going through there, to censor the tokens that had to get updated because the sensor regex wasn't looking for a bracket. Things like that take me way too long. Otherwise, yeah, tokens inside the JSON get censored, different places. We've got all that code set up. And yeah, so all of that is there to a state where I think it's good enough. Few more loose ends I want to tie up, but nothing major. There are like a bunch of little to-do items in the code that need to go through and get cleaned up. I do need to get the config in the text output. So that's another little bit of change. So this is the HTML output. There's also not the text, there is some XML output for, is it JUnit? I think it's JUnit. Yeah. So there are some options to put the config in JUnit, so I need to move some stuff around to get that in there so that I've got the config in the JUnit just like I have the config in the HTML. Let's see, what else going on in there? I feel like once that is kind of to the state that I like it there, which is pretty close, it's just going to be adding a whole lot more test cases. That'll be the rest of the work, and that's the important work. That's going to take some time, but I feel like it's going to move a lot quicker than some of this other stuff that's been whenever I have the time I'm going through and like, oh man, I got to figure out how to do JUnit stuff again. Adding test code feels it's a lot easier to me. I mean, if you want to go in there and try to write all this with Copilot ROM, go for it. It's out there. It's a public Git repo. I'm not a Copilot person.
Yeah, I will take a look, Brandon.
A lot of my effort in here was actually trimming down the Go mod from what we had in the other one. So this is just YAML, the specs, the Go digest, and our other conformance. We were pulling in a bunch of stuff that we didn't control so well. And some of the things were getting a little aged in there. We had Ginkgo and Gomego, which some people really don't like, myself included. Reggie was another one of those little side projects where things got thrown in there that should probably have been in our code and not over there. So a lot of that got moved around. But otherwise, yeah, code is there. It exists. It's in progress. Any questions? Or any other things you guys want to chat about today? It's a small crew.
The outage yesterday, maybe it's too soon, but have you run it against Docker Hub yet?
Not yet. I've been running against a little local registry here that is test against, and I'm less concerned about the test cases and more concerned right now about just getting the structure of this so that we can add test cases.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So some of this not too long ago was me going and adding the authentication code. So a bunch of the API in here had back and forth. Somewhere in there is the authentication. This would be faster if I was in VS Code instead of on the web page. Yeah, so there's some parse auth header and other things. And I snagged some of the regexes that we are using in our current conformance code, but I'd really like to rework this and add an actual proper parser for some of these headers that isn't just a regex that assumes that none of the fields are quoted and all this stuff. So work to be done there as well. Lots of to-dos scattered all around the code.
Yeah. I guess the more important question is whether or not writing new test cases is easy.
My hope is they are. So as I go through some of these, test an empty list. I require that the tag listing API is there. If it's not, then I fall out and just say, hey, I skipped this test because you told me that API isn't there. That line's no longer there. Ignore that. The API tag list just calls the API code that knows how to do some tag listing, and then it either fails or passes. That is a wrapper to simplify some stuff because up here we're going to run a lot of tag listings. We're going to run a lot of blob pushes and puts and whatnot and manifest. But there are places in here where I'll call the code a little bit more directly, or there will be at least in the future. And I'll jump over to where that other stuff is implemented. Okay, so I don't have anything else in there for that. So let me jump over to where it's actually implemented. So tag list is just saying, call the API, do a HTTP do, and then I pass all these with whatever, with other things, with whatnot. So with multiple entries there for a URL, and then either I get a status OK and the JSON body I extract out of it, or I get a not found, and either of those are valid. And so you could rewrite your own little version of a tag listing that says, make sure there actually was a tag listing and that I wasn't missing it. So you just kind of skip a little bit of this out. So each of these is trying to be as simple as possible and just a little plug and play-ish. Similar for the blog post, just does the API call, a bunch of function args in there. Or I call in, I say it's a post method. Here's the URL. Look or add a content link header, add a content type header, add the bytes, and then I expect that I get it created with certain headers in there. So a lot of this is trying to be somewhat easy to read and write and whatnot. And then as I go down, I'll pull up some of those other with things. So that is a bad example, and the or is a bad example. When I do the method, it just says go through the require function and modify the request function. Add an extra entry over there and just say, make sure the request method is the method I passed in. When I pass the URL, make sure the request URL is the URL passed in. When I add a header, just go to the request, add a header in there. And similar, there's a bunch of these for the response, expect the status. So look for the response, make sure it matches one of the status codes in that response. So it's a little bit of a DSL on top of it, but it's trying to make it somewhat easy, but it's also all in this code right here. If we don't like it, we can rewrite it however we want to rewrite it.
That seems fairly clean.
Yes, it's like the approval that you're always hoping, but you never know if you're really going to get.
Yeah.
Each of these little function ops, the API do opt in there. It's a small struct, I think, up top. Has three fields, the request, the response. Yeah. Request, response, and the writer. So I can add more of those into the options if I need to add more things I'm doing in there. And the do just generates a list of request functions, a list of response functions, the writer, and it just runs the options over that whole list. Makes a whole list of things and then sends the request. Then it runs the functions against the response.
Yeah. Classic functional arguments pattern.
Yep. I'm keeping it very Go-ish, trying to make it so that people that know Go aren't looking at this thing saying, I don't follow any of this stuff. The part I'm missing is I haven't commented half of this. So work to
Yeah.
be done. All right, that's all I have. I feel like I need to take Derek back out of this meeting because I thought he was going to show up again. Sorry, Derek. 5 seconds of showing up before we start chatting doesn't count.
Yeah, I think you were probably actually correct.
Meeting conflict. Click the wrong
Yeah, I
one.
think you did have a conflict.
Oh, all righty. Anything else we don't want to chat about today? We got the backlog issues. If anybody wants to chat about those, feel like Tinon, you've already put your comment there, so I'm not going to ping you for that one. I have actually pinged the other distribution spec maintainers and asked them if they're interested in another maintainer. They're as responsive as you all would have expected. So still working on that side. And yeah, other than that, I got nothing. I'm just happy to have finished up a conference last week and a few other things going on. So slowly getting back into the normal routine of things. I did hear from Jory. She said she wasn't going to be able to make the first half of the meeting. So I was trying to see if I could stall for the second half, but I don't think we're going to make it that far. And she did say she had nothing to talk about. So not missing anything there. All right. You're both too quiet. So I'm going to assume that is the clock out for the day. Give you gentlemen back 40-ish minutes. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, evening, night, morning, whatever time zone. And check back in next Thursday. Sound
Yeah.
like a plan?
Thanks for the walkthrough.
Yeah, you bet. All right. Cheers, gentlemen.
Bye.